Dans all the time. This is the Dan Time Podcast with your host, Dan McArthur.
All right, thanks for checking out the Dan Time Podcast. It's good to be with you. It's good to not have to say my name at the top of every episode, which not a big problem there, but it's kind of nice to have somebody say it for me, get that out of the way, and really have to thank Mr. Danny Cole. I hope you enjoyed, I know you did, the episode from last week with the Ottawa-based guitarist extraordinaire and one hell of a gentleman, Danny Cole. I appreciate you as a listener. Haven't said it as often as I need to. It's like someone that says, I haven't told you I love you. Why have I been slacking on that? You do mean a lot to me. Why haven't I told you that? It's out of the same vein. Thanks for listening and subscribing. And I do appreciate you. I have always wanted to make that a prominent reason for doing all this. Yes, I've got the gimmick, Dan talking to fellow Dans, but the show is just supposed to be fun, and I still don't hear a lot of hosts saying anything beyond thanks for listening. So I wanted to take it a step further and speak to you, the person that's actually listening to this show right now, and you're paying attention, and you like it, and you've liked all the episodes, and you just hear somebody on the other side, on the microphone, saying, you're a big deal. You might feel like you're not a big deal. You may or may not have questions about where you fit in, where you belong, what's going on in this chapter of your life, why is everything going wrong? Maybe that's not going on with you. If that's the case, keep doing what you're doing. But if you need to hear some positive words, that's a big part of me doing this. Is a podcast is nothing without the people who listen to it. And I listen to a bunch of shows, and they do a lot of things right. But just like my favorite bands, I think, you could use the Kiss example. Paul Stanley said something along the lines of, we wanted to go out, we were watching bands live, and we wanted to be the band that we weren't seeing. We wanted to put on the show that we weren't seeing. I don't want to take that and say, I want to be the best show that you've ever heard. But I want you to listen to this and hear a little less vanity from the host. It's pretty easy to hear some shows that are produced very well. They've got great guests, but the host, you just know that this person just has a giant ego, and they can't let the other person talk. They've got to interject you just call, it's coming every 5, 6, 7 seconds. The guest is just into the very first leg of telling an exciting story, answering a question, drawing on their deep into the archives to enlighten you, and then the host has got to interject, and he does it repeatedly the entire conversation. That stuff drives me nuts, and you won't hear it on this show on Dan Time. So always want to bring a little something different to the table. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel, but you're going to hear from people who, in many cases, I want you to come away thinking, she was incredible. Why isn't her music all over the place? Why don't more people know about this musician? But thanks for being a part of this. I wanted to plug in a bonus episode here that really has no format. This is basically a state of Dan Time, and even 100+ episodes in, a reveal party in explanation of where Dan Time came from. Some background on the phrase Dan Time. First of all, the state of Dan Time is strong. It's never been stronger. We've come a long way since the first 10 or 15 episodes recorded using a couple tin cans and some wire. And it's been a real joy to assemble the body of work here week after week, month after month, almost 2 years in. And I've come to a realization that it's okay. It is all right to step back a little bit. And I'm here to announce that the quest to deliver an episode every week without fail is officially over. Now, some of you may hear that and think, oh, well, no big deal, whatever. What else is going on, Dan? I don't really care about that. Some of you may be hearing that and thinking, what are you talking about? You've ruined my Monday mornings. What's happening? I imagine this to be a very, very small minority, so I apologize. The fact is, when I started this show, I had a 5-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 1-year-old. So now we're almost 8. We're 8, we're 4, we're 3. And the demands, I don't have to explain all this. I've been telling myself, Dan, you do not have to go through this, but maybe this just helps me. There are too many demands on my Dan time. I once joked to John Hunter, a previous guest, that, I really and truly, this was back then, a year ago, I don't have time to do this. I don't really have time to spend on all facets of the Dan Time podcast. If we're being honest, I create that time where it really doesn't exist, and the time has come to just face reality, let it go, let it slide, and be happy about it. So there you have it. I've always prided myself on giving you a weekly guest. But what it's led to is, if you've been listening for 2 years, you know that at some point I have somebody from my personal network. It's a friend. It's my brothers have both been on the show. My mom has been on the show. My dad. I have stopped short, and believe me, I have asked. I've asked my wife, Natalie, and you'd love to see these. I've asked my wife, Natalie, and if you could be a fly on the wall on the times where the question has come up. You can imagine I'm at the end of the line. I've got to create some content here, and we're in the car together, or we're standing there in the kitchen together, and how you have to lead up to, or not just pop it out there. Honey, you want to be on the show? And the answer is always no. It's always no. And that's okay. That's probably a good thing. If I asked one of my kids to be on the show, they would gladly accept. And as you know, they've usually Wyatt has made a couple appearances. So there's just not a need to do that. I'm tightening up. You're still going to get some Danielles. Would love to have some previous guests that I think very, very highly of. Dana Wiley, Dana Perry, Danielle Moralia. Some of those names, like to have them back on. And you may see some new female guests, not named Dan. But for the most part, I'm going to really, really tighten up here and focus on Dan's, or people that have a legitimate claim to Dan, or a Dan story or theme, or Danny's. And if I'm not pleased with what I have lined up for that particular week, well, you're just not going to get a slice of the pie that week. And my recommendation is dial it back. There are plenty. I think anybody who creates anything and puts it out there for the public to consume, You know, there are episodes that did not set the world on fire as far as view count and downloads that I'm thinking, man, that was one of the best. That's one of my favorite conversations. Go back and check out some of the obscure or not so obscure episodes that you may have missed this time last year and check it out. So that's the update on the state of the show. As you know, maybe you don't know, I'm not big into this long, drawn-out monologue. I don't like to talk. I like to talk. I'm not going to argue that. I've been told that in the past. People that I've worked with, etc. Now, I can go quiet for a long period of time, but I don't mind talking. Something like this, though, I don't really want to do an episode where it's just me speaking for 27 minutes or 18 minutes. And there's shows I listen to where they do this all the time, multiple times a week. And it's maybe 15, 20 minutes. And then they get to the guest. And I don't know about you, but I've got some of my favorite shows. I'm not going to name drop them. But a lot of times, once they get to, all right, let's get to the guest this week. If it's not somebody that's really important to me, I'm out of there. I'm done. And I loved the intro. But these people, they're great at it. A couple things I want to talk about and then wrap up. Not even that important, just some observations. I just celebrated my 46th birthday. For those of you wondering, how old is this guy? Is this a midlife crisis project? Who is he? I don't divulge a lot of details about me, and that's by design. That is not an accident. You know, I'm a firm believer in the idea that the older you get, I was just talking to Travis about this earlier today, the interest in the minutia of your day-to-day, or there's no interest. It doesn't exist. It really doesn't exist. How many times have you gotten around the people you work with on a Monday and they ask you, how was your weekend? How was your weekend? Sometimes you answer this question face to face. A lot of times you answer it on a phone call. And for some of you, that question is being answered on a Zoom call, maybe with or without video. When was the last time that you launched into a blow-by-blow recap of how Saturday played out and the activities that you were engaged in, what your kids were engaged in, the outcome of ball games, the birthday party that you took your kids to, the movie that you saw, the rock that you climbed, the plane that you jumped out of, the house that you cleaned, the shed that you reorganized. How many times have you launched into these narratives about those 2 glorious days away from your job duties, only to find that the reaction on the other end when you stop talking is just crickets for maybe 2 or 3 or 4 agonizing seconds. And then you realize not only did you lose them, you never had them. You never had them. And it's not that your stories aren't important. It's not like your weekend wasn't exciting. It was. You had a great weekend. It's just that people in 2025 do not have the bandwidth. Some of them don't, they're not interested, but others, good, nice, caring people, they just don't have the room for it. They don't. But you don't have to ask the question, but I guess we feel like we ought to. 8 o'clock Monday morning, we all jump on a team call. How's your weekend? It's a reflexive question. I like hearing about this stuff. I'm one of these people, I wouldn't say it drives others crazy, but I can remember a couple years ago, I get into the small talk. I get into that pre-meeting chit-chat, the icebreaker talk, the obligatory intro chatter, the Zoom call while we're waiting for the call to populate. And you can always tell. Sometimes it's the meeting organizer. Usually it is. They've been through this motion 100 times, 1,000 times, whatever. And they're not going to explore the mundane for more than 3.5 minutes. It's like there's let's talk about the Super Bowl. Oh yeah, how about that drop pass in the third quarter? Wow, that was crazy. Yeah, we had a great time. We should have won that game. All right, well, let's look at Q3 and our goals for Q3 and see where we are, budgeted versus actual, and on and on. And I will keep it going. I will drag it out. It's almost like I can stop, and I have to stop sometimes. All right. Been thinking about this a lot lately. Bands, music, bands that I like. Again, being 46, usually the bands that you're into, they got a good 10 years on you at least. The founding members. And in my case, if you were a kid, a teenager, when you got into some of these groups, they're in their 60s. Maybe some of them up over 70. And I just wrote this on my notes for today. Like I just scratched out a couple things I might want to talk about. Bands getting old. When you get to be my age, I like being able to say that now. When you get to be my age. Or I always enjoyed this when I was 26. And an old guy would say, now, Dan, you're too young to remember. You're too young to remember. Well, let's not be so sure about that, Hank. What am I too young to remember? I might surprise you. I don't get those comments like I used to. Or, oh, you're just a baby. When you tell someone, oh, I'm 32, I'm 35. They don't tell you that you're just a baby at 46 anymore. But anyway, I look at bands. So all of them, whoever you looked up to, whether it was artists, musicians, actors, actresses, and you just realize they're all aging. They all look old. And then you realize, oh, he's 72, he's 78, I didn't realize this actor was 85 now. Of course they look old. You're getting older. But I see it with bands and in the type of music that I grew up on. Some of them pull it off better than others. Some of the heavy metal bands with members now in their late 60s, early 70s. Not saying they shouldn't be up there on stage shredding away, but it's just a reminder that, wow, the youth of that movement of the original group of bands is gone. Now, there are some up-and-coming bands, but the forefathers. And then it got me thinking, in general, if these wrinkly old dudes can get up there on stage and people still want to reach out and grab the fretboard or slap hands with them, and they're in the front row and they're just overwhelmed with excitement. Why do we do this? Like, why do we still remain enamored with, Metallica, for instance, my favorite band? I'm at a point now where if I met James Hetfield, Lars Ulrich, these are accomplished, innovative, groundbreaking people, but they're just people. I would shake hands with them and, ask them how they think or James, I guess he still follows the Raiders. How do you feel about the upcoming season? I wouldn't ask for anything to be autographed. If I didn't get a photo, whatever. That's just my take on it. Why are we so wrapped up with these people when, and I know this is a long lead in, where are the all-female groups that are 60 plus years old in rock and roll? Where are they? Why aren't they? And this is a kind of a loaded, thinking aloud question. Why aren't they idolized? You got the Bengals. I'm proud that Kitty from think their debut record was 1999. I worked in a record store at the time. I believe they're still together. They were together for a long time. All female groups. A lot of bands with female front women. And maybe another guitarist that's female, but a couple backing members that are male. That's a lot more common. Why aren't there 4 women, all original members, or maybe you got a bassist that's rotating in and out that's not part of the original 4? Maybe there's not an answer for this. But number one, why aren't there more groups of women that have been pals since the mid-'80s, mid-'90s? Maybe they split. Maybe they reconciled. And then the second part is, let's just say there's one of these groups, which I guess you could, again, go back to the Go-Go's, the Runaways. I think they get together sometimes, and the fans adore them. But, yeah, some things I wonder about on that end. And then it's also just, I'm not enamored with these groups anymore. Because once you yourself are older than 16, 18, 22, you got some life behind you, and your favorite lead guitarist or drummer is not that long-haired, youthful, 27-year-old stud, rock and roll hero, and they're now 66. Like James Hetfield. I so identified with Hetfield in the 90s, reading his lyrics, buying magazines, wanting to read about what he was saying in an interview. And now, I love Metallica. I like the memories that I have of some of my favorite bands, but they go back to like the late 90s, the early part of the aughts, the 2002, 3, 4, 5 kind of period, and how I felt with the music and those personalities back then. The MLB All-Star Game. If you watched it, I'm curious to hear what you liked, what you didn't like about it. I think overall, the game itself was a success. Now, I consider myself a traditionalist, purist baseball fan. I don't like the pitch clock. I don't like the ghost runner rule. I don't like the glove. I really didn't like the end of the dead ball era and installing walls around the ball fields. Because if you read about that, those walls, those fences were not designed to keep baseballs in and to produce home runs. They were installed to keep people out of the ballpark who had not paid to be there. So I guess you could say I'm against the home run. Very stubborn and almost unwavering purist of the game. That being said, if you didn't make the rules, you better accept the rules that have been made, or find another hobby, find something else to get into, because it ain't going to change. So I thought the All-Star Game was competitive. You can't make baseball really any less competitive in an exhibition game in quite the same way you can in football or basketball. So the pitchers are still throwing heat. Best players in the game are still striking out when they don't want to. But I didn't anticipate that I would like the swing off at the end to decide the outcome of the game. And I don't want to see that outside of the All-Star Game. But for the event, I thought it really made for an exciting finish for the fans. The automated strike zone, ABS. I can't get behind it. I cannot get behind it. I see why some people do like it. During the All-Star Game, was it amusing to see a player challenge a ball or strike, look up at the video board, and see that he was right? Yes. But one of the great things about baseball is the arguments. You don't want them every time after every play. But I think we're going to get to a place in the game that the manager no longer, forevermore, storms out of the dugout, heading right to home plate to give the umpire a piece of his mind, and getting tossed from the game, the guy at the plate getting tossed right behind him. I think all that's going to be a thing of the past pretty soon. I just don't want to see in the playoffs the ghost runner. Don't want to see any guys on base to start any extra innings in the postseason. And I don't think they will. But that's all I got for today for this bonus episode. This is just an appreciation event. Dan Time is running strong. And if a week goes by and I didn't give you some new content, I think you're going to get over it. And I think I'm going to get over it as well. So part of this is just me letting go, relaxing a little bit. What are the coaches and executives who are stepping down? They often say, well, I'm going to spend some more time with my family. So that's what I'm doing. I'm not stepping aside, but I am allowing for more time with my family. They get a lot of my Dan time, okay? So don't take that the wrong way. But I'm going to give them even more Dan time in the place of bringing back somebody like a Kevin McCroskey or a Travis Dykes, excellent guest, or even Dr. Glenn Fleisig. I mean, some of these episodes where you've got a non-Dan and it's Dr. Fleisig, it's Sean Perry. Some of these, well, you have to realize Dan Weinrib referred Dr. Fleisig, he referred Gerald Watkins from the Friends of Rickwood. I think Sean Perry is maybe the only guest that is not from my network of friends, and it really and truly is just an extension of my interests. So Sean might be grandfathered in. He might reappear. I don't know. But you may not see another guest of that variety. I'm going to let it go. I'm going to drop pursuit on people who are just of interest to me. It's got to be a Dan. It's got to be a Danielle, somebody from the Danverse. But thank you for listening. Oh, I almost forgot. The meaning of Dan Time. So, hey, this is just for you guys. This is for the people who made it this far. Here it is. Finally. I used to run around with a couple ladies. I was not in a relationship with either one of them, but this is about 15 years ago. And I can't remember which one told me, and I've asked both of them to appear on the show and haven't been able to make it happen. I'll probably keep trying. But they used to tell me, Dan, or you're on Dan Time. I would show up places 10 minutes late, 15 minutes late. That was a recurring problem back then. I don't think I'm quite that bad, but that's really where it came from. You're on Dan Time, I was told back then. And so I pulled that out of the bag and made use of it for this podcast. And there's your answer. There is your answer. But it's also come to mean Dan Time is a time for me, a time for you to escape the day-to-day responsibilities and just lighten up and have fun and have your own time. And for me, it's some Dan time. So there you have it. Thanks for listening, folks. And we'll see you next time. Not next Sunday, maybe next Sunday, but next time.
Daddy, I want popcorn now.
And here he is, like right on cue. Here's Wyatt. I want some chocolate milk. And hey, Wyatt, is time over?
Yeah. Time's over.
Have a great week. And thanks for listening to the show. Tell a friend about it.